time, we'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than two.
All right. Welcome to Relaxed and Free, a clinically minded, biblically based counseling podcast. I am your host, Cary Corley, here with my good friends, Doug Bonebrake and Chris Renfro, also known as Google Chris.
Hello.
Yeah. And you know what? This is our...
What kind of episode is this, Cary?
Shoot the crap.
This is our relaxed and free episode.
This is our relaxed and free episode. This is a bonus episode.
This is a bonus relaxed and free episode.
Yeah. So there's we're just going to be talking.
Yeah.
Much to the detriment of our reputation.
Unlike every other podcast, we're going to talk in this one.
Right.
Yeah. This is a novel approach. We're gonna say words into microphones.
We're gonna say stuff that you guys find very interesting.
Yeah. So we had we had a good interview with Misty.
Yeah,
previously.
I really want Misty to come back.
Yeah, we need to have her back.
Okay.
That's a foregone conclusion. If she will come back, which
I think
we have
she
on record that she will.
Yeah, she said so.
Yeah, she said
we
it.
recorded
We have it recorded. It is basically legally binding. That was a really great episode. Great story.
What did you find most compelling about
hard story? I thought the focus there was a lot. She focused a lot on when the trauma happens. So there were two things. One, highlighting that you physically change when trauma happens, brain wise, which then affects your whole body, right? Yeah. So it's a rippling effect, which also ripples into your overall health, but obviously your emotional health, and then obviously your spiritual health as well. Mm-hmm. And so we're just connected in all these things, like all of our stuff is intertwined. So I knew that like logically, but to then like see it played out basically through her story and just narrating all of that, right? You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like it's different when you see it in a practical setting rather than just, And then the other component
is different.
Was that
when you have the person sitting in front of you telling you how they experienced it.
Right. And all the details that you like she remembered I could smell the cigarette of that lady.
Oh.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like
that's such a minor detail in that, but
that's what takes you there, right?
Yeah. No, I remember that too.
Yeah. And so that was really intriguing. And then the other piece was that notion, and maybe that's part of her counseling. I didn't get a chance to ask, which is why we need to have her back.
Yeah.
But the whole thing about like kind of separating, right? When this trauma happens in a couple, to kind of separate and then get them to a safe spot before focusing on them as a unit.
Right.
Is that a normal thing? Is that
It's a great question. I think you would talk to some counselors and there would be debate on that. Obviously she's our guest in that moment, and I'm not going to be like, well, actually, I would, I used to do things that way. I'll say this because I see both sides of it. Mm-hmm. I used to do things that way. And I think there are definitely inexperienced counselors out there. And I will be the first to say that when I met with the Terrells, we're talking 6 years ago now. Mm-hmm. And I've grown professionally since then. And so just like anybody in any field for 6 years, what I'm capable of doing now, was not capable of doing then. And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it or whatever. I'm not saying any of that. What I'm saying is, if the Terrells came into my office today, I would not say, hey, we should do individual therapy
first and then come back.
I wouldn't.
So what's your?
I would say let's meet as a couple, but also now, and I talked about this in the interview with Misty. I did not have a robust methodology for trauma-informed care at that time, like I do now. Now I have EMDR, and it has changed the scope of my practice in so many ways. And that's one way. So when I'm counseling with a couple where there's been betrayal and trauma, essentially, and let's say we're gearing the session towards communicating around a fight that they just recently had, or even if
can I be the dum-dum and ask what EMDR is?
Oh gosh, that's a huge statement. So hold on to
because
it
you guys have talked about it in the interview, and now you're talking about it.
Just
again.
Google it. Just Google it.
I guess that is kind of my job.
No, yes, you can ask that, and I do want to answer that. Let me finish this thought, and then we'll get into that. So now I have the tools to, if Misty were in my office today and I knew that Jim, because she talked about, unsafe people. Right. I know Jim's safe, right? I've done all of my assessments. I know that the husband that's sitting in the chair is not a narcissistic, criminally minded individual who just wants to punish his spouse. Like, I know that's not happening.
So that's part of your procedure, though, right? This couple comes in that you've never met.
Yeah.
And then you're going to evaluate both.
You'll weed that out in the beginning.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you do still somewhat separate them, because you're not going to be able to get that.
They would,
while
for
they're both in the room,
for me and in my practice, well, it just depends, on the people. It depends on the people. And then there's so much that goes into that. One of the things that we do here is an online assessment that the people would take individually. So they would answer, and it's an extensive assessment. So it's from the Gottman Institute, and it's a compilation of several assessments pieced together. It can take up to 2 hours to complete. And in that assessment, it looks for that type of behavior and gives the spouses their own time and their own place to write down if something's going on.
Okay.
So there's that. I do want to say too, and this probably doesn't make for good podcasting or Hollywood or whatever it is.
Definitely Hollywood.
I don't know if you guys know. I'm posting this directly to Hollywood. To Hollywood.
Yeah, Hollywood's on the line waiting.
It doesn't make for great radio or whatever it is, but the majority of people that come through my office and into counseling are not going to fit the paradigm of someone who is an abuser, which is what Misty said, right? Someone who's just an evil person that just wants to see someone suffer.
Right.
That is not, I know that makes for good movies, but that is not the majority of people that come into counseling.
Yeah. If you work for Lifetime, cover your ears.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Now I lost my train of thought.
Well, so you were about to describe
EMDR.
and explain what EMDR is. Yeah.
Okay. EMDR stands for, and now I'm going to look at Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi.
EMDR stands for eye movement desensitization reprocessing, and is a method in professional counseling. And I say that because you have to have a master's degree and be licensed as a professional counselor in order to practice EMDR. You can't get trained or anything in it without those. So, but it was created by a gal named Francine Shapiro, and she was she has passed away now, but she was a cognitive behavioral therapist, and in the 70s and 80s, and now for those of us who don't know what cognitive behavioral therapy is,
Yep.
so cognitive behavioral therapy is you have maladaptive beliefs, right?
Let's keep going down the rabbit hole.
This is horrible. You have stinky beliefs. No,
I mean,
you have bad thoughts, or no, bad beliefs, and bad beliefs create bad thoughts, and bad thoughts create bad actions. Is the quintessential teach a kindergartner cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
All right. You want to replace those bad beliefs with adaptive beliefs or good beliefs. Okay. Take out the bad beliefs, replace them with good beliefs, and then you create good thoughts, and then you create good behavior. That is cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT in a nutshell.
Yep.
Okay. So
that is what Francine Shapiro was practicing.
Like I'm depressed. I feel like I am not worth anything. And those are like examples of
a bad belief.
What's the smart person word for that?
Maladaptive.
So, okay, maladaptive and adaptive.
Being bad. And
I'm understanding the terminology a little bit now.
Okay,
I told you I was going to be the dum-dum. I'm sorry.
They're almost the
I can
same
Google
word,
stuff,
but they're slightly different. Does that help?
Yeah.
So that's cognitive behavioral therapy. Francine Shapiro, practicing cognitive behavioral therapy. She's on a walk, processing some of her own trauma, and she sees. I could be screwing this story up, but this is how I talk to my clients, so sue me.
No, don't sue them.
Please don't. So she's sitting on a park bench or something, okay? And she's watching trees sway back and forth while she's processing, and she notices that it makes a difference in the way that she's processing her own issues, okay? And she's like, wow, maybe there's something to this. And long story short, because it is a long story, she finds out that the bilateral stimulation that's created in the left and right hemispheres of the brain from the swaying of the trees. So you have the swaying of the trees that is creating a visual stimulation to the eyes is actually lighting up the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Okay, so she takes that neuroscience fact and combines it with cognitive behavioral therapy to create EMDR. Fast forward from 1980s to now, EMDR has become a data-driven, successful modality of therapy, which means it works really good.
Yeah, and
it means it works real good.
But also specifically, and I can't make this recommendation. You can, but Lindsay also trained in EMDR.
Dr. Lindsay Bonebrake.
Dr. Lindsay Bonebrake, my wife. Yes, yep. I don't call her doctor all the time.
The real Dr.
My wife's name is Lindsay, so I just want to make sure.
Yes, thank you.
I hope her Twitter handle is the real Dr. Bonebrake. I hope
it will be
at the real Dr. Bonebrake.
We didn't start the clock.
She told me about that. For obviously for kids with trauma, because she specializes in the kid therapy, but for veterans with PTSD, it's huge.
Yeah,
it's like built for that.
Yeah.
And so I've been preaching that to all my friends in the military or former military.
Yeah.
Because almost all of them have PTSD of some shape and form. And I'm like, you need to ask your counselor, you need to ask the VA, you need to ask all these people about EMDR because it's like exactly what you need.
It's so true.
Yeah.
I tell all my clients it's weird, but it works. And it is weird, but it really does work. And I did not participate in it for the longest time because I put it on the same shelf. Man, I'm going to get in so much trouble. I put it on the same shelf as like essential oils and like chiropractic care.
The homeopathic.
Yeah.
Hey, I love my chiropractor.
Speaking of Misty, if she were in here right now, she'd throw something.
I know.
I'm sure she would. She's like, I thought you learned.
No, you should know better.
I'm naturally a doubting Thomas.
Okay, so EMDR, what you just set me in front of a tree and it sways, and now I'm
Yep. That's it.
and now
Yeah.
I'm better.
That's
Yeah,
it.
go
Look
sit
at
here.
trees.
Go sit here and think about your problems, boy.
Pray it away.
I mean,
it's-
I'm trying
No.
to picture. Obviously,
So the
you have some
therapist-
sort of. Go ahead.
Do you know?
I have
Do you
no
know?
idea.
I feel like you're guiding us right.
No, I
Yeah, so
legitimately
the
have
therapist-
no idea.
The therapist who's trained in EMDR will use either a light bar. Sometimes they'll use their hand. Like, it's hard for people to see me, obviously, but they'll sit. Don't touch the microphone.
That was my fault.
Doug.
Sorry.
To create this bilateral stimulation. So you can do it visually, you can do it auditorily, you can do it with headphones, or you can do it in a tactile way, which I prefer, and that's how I introduce it to most of my clients is through buzzies. You hold them and they buzz back and forth in your hand, and they create the bilateral stimulation needed to stimulate the left and the right hemisphere while you are processing a traumatic event. Okay. So the theory is that when you are living through a trauma, your left hemisphere of your brain shuts down. That's where all of your thought, your rationale, your ability to process what's going on in the moment is in your left hemisphere. Your fight or flight response is in your right hemisphere, and it is hyperactivated. So you heard Missy say, I was hypervigilant.
Mhm.
So that's in the right brain. Well, that's good and well when you're in a combat situation,
Mhm.
right? Like if I'm in a foxhole, and I need to survive, like I want to have the energy and the directiveness to do
The
right fight.
hypervigilance.
Yeah. Where it gets messy is then when I come home from combat, and this is oversimplification.
Right. How do you
But
turn?
for
How do you
the
turn the
purpose.
left side back on?
Yeah. So, which
But-
the military spends a great deal of money for military guys turning the right
Sure.
side off and keeping them
Oh, I see.
present
I
in
see.
the moment,
Right.
right? Which is like, you slap a Navy SEAL and they're like, do it again.
Mhm.
No, just kidding. I've never slapped a Navy SEAL. I just want to say that.
I don't think that
That's
would be
good.
a great idea.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, they might not say do it again. They might
No,
do
I think
something.
you might not remember what happens.
Right.
Actually,
So Lindsay described it one time because she has to do this with kids. So she's created
Which,
an analogy
whole different. Yeah.
for kids, and
perfect for me.
I'm gonna butcher this too because it's been a while since she's told me. But it was something like when trauma is you have the left side and the right side, and it's like two filing cabinets, and for your memories, and that when trauma happens, you put files in the wrong filing cabinet and they get out of order. And normally, like when you go to sleep, you are trying to like put everything in the files and keep it all orderly, but you're missing these files and they're out of place. And so the only way to get them in the right spot is to process through that trauma. And then using this bilateral stimulation, it will allow you to put the file in the right spot and you can finally like sleep again. But you got to relive it.
Yeah, you got to be
Which is-
going through it at the same time, which is why the
Well-
therapy is happening at the same time as you're getting the stimulation.
Exactly.
Right.
So you like walk through it and it takes a long time.
And
it
in
takes a
therapy,
licensed
we would
professional.
call that exposure, right? So I'm exposing myself to the trauma.
Yeah.
Even the memory of the trauma again. And exposure therapy is different from EMDR in the sense that there's not bilateral stimulation. So if people are just practicing exposure therapy, you're talking through
Mhm.
your talk therapy through the incident type of thing. And then EMDR adds the bilateral stimulation. And there's really not in EMDR. What I love about EMDR is the therapist just gets out of the way, really, and lets the brain in all of its miraculous design work.
Yeah. You're
It's
like
just
a
you're just-
guide, like a Sherpa. Yeah.
Come to my yurt.
Yeah. I can take you to the mountaintop. I don't know the accent.
I don't know the
That's
accent
probably
for
not
Sherpa
okay
either.
to be English.
Yeah.
Is this another pop culture reference?
No, I think
A Sherpa's like
Come
a
to-
guide, like a mountain guide.
come to the mountain.
Yeah.
I'm a
It could be
Sherpa.
Siberian. Yeah, maybe in Siberia.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I just the EMDR stuff is really cool to hear about. And
Yeah.
I haven't experienced it, but Lindsay,
Oh, you haven't?
No, Lindsay's
Oh.
told me a bunch of stories and I've read up on it and stuff. And
Oh man.
it's so encouraging. And like for real.
So I'll tell you, Lindsay is the one. So for a year, so Lindsay and I work together. We've talked
Dr.
about
Lindsay Bonebrake.
it. Yeah.
Not
The
your wife.
real,
Yeah, not my-
the real Dr.
The
Bonebrake.
real Dr.
Yeah,
Lindsay.
I'm gonna sign her up
Work
for
together.
Twitter with that
And
handle.
I think right away she was like, Cary, you need to be doing EMDR. Like, and I was like,
Who is this little girl?
I did my whole essential oil. I was like, I don't participate in essential oils and
Yeah.
chiropractic care and this all wackadoo stuff, And I really, in my own practice, I ran into not being able, and I talked about this with Misty, not being able to continue to give people the tools of communication because someone's being triggered in session. And it doesn't matter. It could be the husband or it could be the wife. One of them or both of them getting triggered, and me saying, "All right, now slow down and go ahead and ask her, how do you feel about that?" If you're in a trauma mind, you're not thinking.
You don't have
like
that left.
You don't
brain.
have that
Yeah.
left brain to slow things down and do that. And I mean, I'm fighting losing battle. I'm getting frustrated, and Lindsay's so graciously like, "You should do EMDR." And I'm like, "Okay." Well, actually, and she said, "Cause Chris Cornine does EMDR." I'm like, "Yeah, that's where I sit Misty and Jim." And she's like, "That's like all he does." And you'd have to know Chris, but Chris is not a fat of the week type guy.
No, yeah, he's
He's
a real straight shooter.
Yeah. You just don't get a sense from him that professional. And
Right.
so I was like, well, maybe if he's doing it, I'll go check it out. And so I went to training, and in the training, you have to do EMDR, which is good. Like, duh, I'm not going to, I want to be able to do, never trust a skinny shift. Never trust a counselor that hadn't done done their own counseling.
right.
And so we're sitting there with other counselors, and the trainer says, "Okay, so now's your time to do EMDR. Your partner is not your therapist. So pick something small." And I'm not typically I'm a 1, so I love following the rules, except for when they don't make sense. And so I looked at my partner and I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do," because they had talked about little T trauma and big T trauma. And she was like, "Everyone do a little T trauma. They're not your therapists." And I was like, "Hey, I'm going to do a big T trauma. Like, I want to know I want to make sure this stuff works." And I didn't come here to talk about when Fufu died when I was 11. I got some serious stuff I want to unpack.
Yeah.
Are you okay with that? And she it's just like wide eyes. And she was like, "Yeah, I guess." I was like, "Okay, cool." And then she said, "You don't want me to do a big T trauma, right?" I was like, "No, yeah, you're good. You can
do little T.
You can do little T trauma. I just want to do a big T trauma."
Right.
I don't 5 seconds in, I'm like crying. I'm like seeing these images, and I did the visual stimulation. So she was just using her hands. And it's hard to explain. I'm seeing these images, and they're all running into each other, and I'm reliving a trauma of when I was, my father was still out. He wasn't in prison yet. And I remember standing in front of the microwave, and I was microwaving peanut butter for some reason. I don't know why.
Fluffer nutter?
I was already working on making myself overweight at this age. So I'm microwaving peanut butter, and I've actually got the spoon in my mouth. And I really don't know what I did. And it doesn't really matter. All I remember is just this dizzying face plant into the microwave. Like I can still feel it. And actually the spoon that was in my mouth went into the back of my throat and cut the back of my throat. And so I'm like tasting blood. And then I just hear my dad yelling. So what had happened is he had hit the back of my head like with a slap and sent me into the microwave and, jacked me up.
Dang.
And like, so I'm processing this. And I think the target in EMDR, you choose targets. The target was just my father.
Mm-hmm.
And
nice light topic. Yeah.
Right. I said
poor
big T
girl.
trauma.
Yeah.
You're thinking
Man.
about my partner.
Yeah.
So I'm
I'm just
processing.
imagining Lindsay being that partner, and she would have been.
So
So
I'm
mad.
processing all of this, and and I think I'm probably one of 3 men out of like 35 total in the thing. So like
the rest are women.
the rest are women.
Yeah.
So like I don't even know if anybody was paying attention, but it's a room full of counselors, so you don't really care.
So how long did that session go? Right. So you're
That
just
was
in
short.
training.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's
That was
what,
short.
5 minutes?
15. That was so they do it in passes. So you'll do the bilateral stimulation for a pass,
Okay.
and passes range from anywhere from 15 to 30 seconds. And I'd say we probably did 12 passes
Okay.
in 15-second snippets.
Oh, okay. So it's not constant.
Mm-mm.
So you're
Not the way that I was trained.
but you're just telling the story the whole way through, and then every once in a
No.
while, or like
No, I'm seeing it.
you're not talking.
I'm not saying anything. No,
Really.
I'm seeing it. And then at the end of a pass, she'll say, "What did you notice?" And I'll say, "I was standing in this one I remember very well. I was standing in the woods. It was very dark. I see a bright light and I started moving towards it." And she would say, "Go with that." And I'd just go back to that spot and I would keep going wherever. And so for me, EMDR is very visual. Now, it's not that way for everybody. I've learned this as I've been practicing it. There's some people who don't see anything. They maybe just feel. So if you break it down into mind, which would be thoughts, feeling, which would be heart, right? Which is not literal heart, but
Sure.
emotional. And then body, which is like body sensations. Some people use all 3. Some people are only geared towards one. Mine's more thought-based, and then emotions kind of spring up from that. So, I started crying very soon into the images, even though they weren't necessarily sad images themselves, right?
It's the hurt that you associate with those.
But that my brain was associating with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
No.
nuts. Does that
Yeah.
answer your question about EMDR?
Yeah. I have like a lot more to want to know about it, but like it's really interesting because like I have never gone to counseling whatsoever. That's why I'm woefully ignorant to any terminology
Everybody should go to
or anything like that. Yeah.
Christopher.
Yep.
Says the counselor. Here's my
Says the-
card.
Okay. At Lakewood Family Therapy, we aim to be your refuge in the storm. We're professional Christian counselors whose sole purpose is to bring healing to your family and hope for the future. If you'd like a free 15-minute phone consultation with one of our professional counselors, you can call or text 816-663-9751 or head on over to our website, lwfamilytherapy.com. We'd love to hear from you. Lakewood Family Therapy, where faith, family, and future is our number one priority.
Okay, well, do you want to ask real questions about the EMDR now that you know? You said you had a whole bunch of questions.
No, I don't.
Do we want to talk about
I guess
else?
my questions are more of like not for a format like this. It would be more like I'm interested in like what that would
Do for you?
what that would do for me. I don't necessarily think that I need to go to counseling, but I'm so like anything where it's like
You know what you sound like to me?
scientific.
Someone on the verge of realizing they need to go to counseling.
No, I think that
Again, here's my card.
I mean,
you
yeah, we
going,
can make the
Doug?
same joke again. Should we do that? I would be interested in the process, and I don't know what I would even share in a situation like that. But the scientific process and what you described is fascinating to me.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
So
It's weird, but it works. And I also tell this to everybody. I'm not a neurologist. And really, what we know about the brain is like a fraction of what there is to be discovered about the brain. So we're talking about all of these things, and we're using images like the file cabinet. And I will often hold my hand up like you're giving someone a high five and talk about it in terms of a neural network. And so you have the target that you're targeting EMDR, and then the fingers are all the branches of the things that need to be processed off of that particular target. So if I chose a target of my father, he's my palm. And then that one incident of abuse is just one finger off of that palm, right? There's other things connected to that target that need to be processed. But I say all that to say is like we're oversimplifying it in an attempt to
Understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's what, and this actually brings me to another thing. We, in Misty's interview, it was kind of that same thing, right? Where we were talking about how we keep trying to do all these legalistic things and create rules and stuff. And, you know, the Bible's mostly gray and that type of thing. But that's how we can do the things that we do. We have to have shorthands and shortcuts in order for us to function well, or to do the higher level process, the higher level functions at all, right? So for instance, like shooting a basketball, there's a ton of motions tied up in that.
Yeah.
But we just say he took a shot, right? And so somebody, I'm not going to be able to remember where I pulled this from, but I heard one time they were breaking down, it might have been like a Malcolm Gladwell book. They were breaking down like how coaching works with like athletes.
Yeah.
So if you're learning a new move for ice skating or whatever, like what do? Because the way that we as humans, as biological creatures, are able to do this is you have like your stride, and you have this and you have that, and we kind of can these things up and package them and seal them off and say, this is my stride, done. And so during a performance or whatever, you're not touching any of those packaged things. You're just doing the motions.
Right. Yeah.
But during practices, during training, in the off season, all that stuff, you can reopen those packages and try and tweak your stride or tweak this or tweak that.
Sure.
And so what's interesting is that if you apply that at a high level to everything, spirituality included, whether it's explicitly written in the Bible or not, we are taking the moral lessons, the parables, all these things, and we're codifying them, creating rules for ourselves of this is what that says to me, and I believe that, so I subscribe that. So here's my internal set of rules that I'm following. And we do this kind of across the board with all things, is that in order for us to be able to talk in general language about highly complex topics, we have to have, a whole bunch of acronyms and words and symbolic things that represent a ton in this small little package.
So I'm going to codify what you just said.
Yeah, hit
we
me.
take something really big and we make it really small so we can do it well.
Yep. Yep. We look at, and we just zoom in where necessary.
Yeah.
Like, and open it up where necessary.
Yeah, when we need to.
That's a really interesting thing, though, to apply that to like a trauma.
Right.
Because, and what she called it, deconstructing, right?
Yeah, that's what she called it.
I was going to ask what she meant by that, but she was moving, so.
So that's a big thing right now. I love how she said the word fundy. For fundamentalist Christians. It's a big thing.
And what does that mean? I was going to get a definition for that too, because I'm kind of outside of this circle a little bit. I don't want to speak for Chris, but I think he put himself in that category too. So
okay, so
what's the category you're putting me in? I was
outside of the inner circle of like the shorthand of the
fundamentalist Christian.
Oh,
fundamentalists.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure I know what fundamentalist Christians are.
Yeah.
Okay, well, it's recently taken on a negative connotation. When it was first created, if we go back to the 60s and 70s, I believe you might have to Google this, Chris.
I'm off duty.
Yeah.
Okay. It was Christian. It was evangelical Christians who wanted to get back to the fundamentals of the faith.
Okay.
They felt as though the church was straying from the fundamentals of the Christian faith.
So is this like a Martin Luther kind of thing where they like nailed it to a door?
It was a type of like Protestant Reformation. You could go that far. And then I think that there's just like all history, there's these cycles of every organization, right? And so even when I was at Dallas Seminary, we had another cycle of that. And in the 2000s, because fundamentalists had taken a bad rap and there's all this negative, connotation associated with the term, we started calling ourselves evangelicals, right? And then the Evangelical Manifesto was created.
So fundamentalists are now evangelicals?
Essentially. I mean, if you look at it historically,
label, I guess.
Now, evangelical, like your modern day evangelical, who didn't have any conceptualization of church history, would turn their nose up at that. But what I am proposing is that yes, it's the same cycle. Of like
just rebranded.
It's rebranded. Yeah.
Okay.
It's rebranded because fundamentalism originally was Christians, Protestant Christians saying, let's get back to the fundamentals of the faith. Sola scriptura, right?
What's that?
So the Bible is the word of God, written by God.
Literal translations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like everything is
exactly literal.
Yeah. Well,
that is something. So I took my job back.
All right, Google, Chris.
So Sola Scriptura is not so
like explicit about
you wouldn't run up against someone who believed that the Bible, who believed in Sola Scriptura, who would not say like, there's no metaphor in the Bible at all. They wouldn't say that.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I think they're okay. Christian fundamentalism movement is a movement in American Protestantism
That's correct. Yeah.
that
Protestantism.
arose in the late 19th century in reaction to theological modernism, which
Yes.
aimed to revise traditional Christian beliefs to accommodate new developments in the natural and social sciences, especially the theory of biological evolution. So I think this was a response to
Darwin.
maybe modern in the 19th century Christian churches kind of adopting
There was
stuff like
the
evolution.
all the
and then-
scientific explosions. Yeah.
Macroevolution,
Right.
I think would be a better way to say that, just from an integrated standpoint.
That's a good yes. And I was gonna say that too. When that came up, I'm like, I just don't understand why people have such a hard time thinking that, whether it's right or wrong, right? There's obviously flaws in it, but that God could have created evolution, like as a mechanism for, like,
Sure. Yeah.
and I'm not saying
There's lots of great believers that would fall on that.
Yeah.
In that camp.
yeah,
I think for me personally, where I draw the line and what I mean by macroevolution is that you have an ape, and then give it, however many millions of years you want to add to your timeline.
Right.
It's essentially, apparently, you can just keep adding.
yeah,
And then, you've got a human. And you got,
Right.
an ape that turns into Homo sapien. It's like, oh gosh, that's a stretch.
so I guess what I'm saying is, as a scientist, it's possible. It's not probable that it would happen on its own. In fact, it's probably near impossible that it would happen on its own.
Like, I could win the Mega Millions way before.
Yeah. Several times over.
Yeah.
Right. Just like life spontaneously occurring. Right.
Right.
So all of these things, in theory, supposedly could happen on their own, but more probably God made those things happen, right? He intervened and
That's what I believe.
but there's still science, like, and that's what bothers me is when they take it. It's, what is that called? The logical fallacy
Legalism.
of, no, there's a specific logical fallacy. It's a false dichotomy
Oh.
that you can only have
starts with a
one
C.
or the other. No, it's called false dichotomy.
Oh, sorry.
There is a C in there.
Yeah.
And so anyway,
I was thinking cognitive dissonance.
oh yes. Yeah. That's what I'm saying though, is you basically propose a topic and say, here are your only two choices. And it's like, well, there's a lot more choices than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Which happens in that oversimplification of
Exactly.
things.
Yeah. Okay, so
yeah.
deconstruction is where we're actually headed. So fundies, now evangelicals, have done this.
Well,
And-
even so, 2000s evangelicals again start to push back on the liberal theology and social constructs, particularly with the LGBTQ movement.
Okay.
So in America, for sure,
Mhm.
when Supreme Court rule, oh man, we wish it went political. Wow, we got to stay out of politics. So
No, it's,
Yeah.
I mean,
well, so
we're not
So
talking
that
about our
happens.
opinions on it.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that happens, and the evangelical manifesto is made, right? And so, again, traditionalist Christians are saying, "Good night." Now we were under attack on creationism back in the 60s and 70s. Fundamentalism came out against that, and now we're the attack is on the front of human sexuality. We need to take a stand against this. The word fundamental now has a negative connotation. Let's call ourselves evangelicals instead.
Right.
We signed the Evangelical Manifesto, I think in like 2009, 2010.
Who's the we?
Evangelicals.
Did they elect somebody or?
Yeah, there was a whole host of pastors and theologians in the evangelical community that signed on board with it. Yeah. So there was not necessarily a vote taken, but it would be a popular consensus that, wow, we respect this person
Sure.
as a voice for the evangelical community.
And then they
That's
self-elect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love Doug's desire for democracy coming in here. It's like history, though. Again, let's go back.
I guess what I'm saying is that if me attending a church and believing in Jesus,
Which would be another fundamental thing, right?
right?
Jesus is the Son of God.
but me having
And
those
also
things
the hypostatic union.
Paints me as a evangelical, and now I'm lumped into this because
I forgot that you
someone
don't like labels.
signed for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Like, is somebody falsely representing me? Like, that's really interesting. But it would make a lot of sense as to why society's at odds with, we're battling each other so hard.
Yeah.
If they're supposedly representing me without my knowledge, that's
Well, isn't it the
potentially
problem
an issue.
with like every major group is the people that are largely heard are the loudest and often most obnoxious of any group.
Yeah, squeaky
people.
wheel.
Oh,
gets
man, I don't know. I guess you could say it's a problem and a strength.
I'm not specifically going after the church or any political group, but it's like typically, especially in today's society, it seems that whenever the stereotype of any individual group is normally the outliers. It's not the gray area in the middle that kind of going back
The
to the
silent
legalistic
majority.
thing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so deconstruction came from
Oh, yeah.
evolution or evangelicals.
No, deconstruction is a new hip term for people who grew up in conservative Christian homes who accepted their faith just right out of the gate, and now and it's very popular among millennials, and they're saying, like, I didn't choose this. This was forced upon me. My faith was forced upon me. And so they are deconstructing their faith. And that's how they're talking about it. Like, I'm deconstructing the faith that was given to me, and I'm reconstructing something new, And so that's what, I think that's what Misty was talking about, and it's a buzzword right now. So every musician I know is Christian musician from the early 2000s deconstructing their faith. Yeah.
Fun tangent. We were at the doctor's office the other day.
Yeah.
And for some reason, this doctor's office just loves HGTV.
My wife could sit there.
I mean,
House
it's
hunters.
nuts.
A lot of public waiting rooms love HGTV.
Is that true? That's where their ratings come from. So
I work for a local bank, and they also every
It's really a smart thing.
TV that is in a waiting
HG.
area is HGTV.
well, so why is this a tangent?
I don't know.
Because there's some show on there, and I was in that waiting room for quite a while. So I watched the whole episode, basically. One of the New Kids on the Block,
Which one?
the one that has this show on HGTV,
Okay.
has a show on HGTV. I don't know the New Kids on the Block. There was a Joey, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was a joke.
That's as far as I
Am I
got.
dating myself?
Was a Wahlberg in there?
Yeah, there's a Wahlberg.
The older Wahlberg.
Yep.
Yeah.
Danny.
Before Wahlburgers.
Danny.
Those are the two I knew. And my sister had a little New Kids on the Block action figure.
Nice.
And his
That
arm
was the first concert I ever went to.
Really?
Yeah.
Step by step.
I remember, I think it was
Ooh,
Donnie that
baby.
swung out over the stage. I can't remember.
I gotta go.
Yeah, I think we are about done. Was there?
Yeah.
Did you have any final things you wanted to wrap up with?
In terms of Missy's interview, no, not really. I thought it was great. I can't wait to have her back on. I think it'll be good. No, I don't have anything.
Cool.
Yeah, I think we are. I think we should wrap this up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you guys join us next time for our next episode. We'd love to hear from you. Send any questions or prayer requests or encouragement to ask me anything at relaxedandfree.com. Until then, rejoice in hope, endure in suffering, and persist in prayer. Much love.
Relaxed and Free is a presentation of Lakewood Family Therapy. Catch up on other episodes wherever you get your podcasts, and please rate and review. Every review honestly helps us bring you this content. Production and engineering led by Doug Bonebrake. Recording done by Chris Renfro. Stay relaxed and free.
Let's not waste time. We'll take this slow. We've got miles behind us, but miles to go. So let's just break this down to the simplest truth. You and I as one will always be better than two. Yeah, you and I as one will always be better than